Two thieves wanted to rob an old man, had no idea royal guard was watching. The late autumn wind whipped around Palace's iron gates as Liam Matthews scanned the crowd, his trained eyes settling on their next potential mark. At 28, he developed an instinct for spotting vulnerability, and the elderly gentleman near the palace entrance practically radiated it. "Target acquired," he murmured to Connor O'Reilly, his partner of 5 years. "Third bench from the left." Connor, 32 and seasoned in the art of pickpocketing, casually unfolded a tourist map. "I see him. Nice suit for someone so careless." Their Mark sat alone, his silver hair ruffled by the wind, wearing a worn but unmistakably expensive Westbury suit. His movements were slow and deliberate as he consulted a leather-bound notebook, his hands trembling slightly. The man's posture screamed vulnerability, shoulders hunched, head bowed, lost in his own world. "Watch peeking out from his sleeve," Liam noted. "Patek Philippe, last year's model. Worth more than our combined annual take." His eyes narrowed as he noticed subtle inconsistencies. The suit showed wear at the elbows, unusual for someone wearing such an expensive timepiece. The shoes, though polished to a mirror shine, had been resoled multiple times. "Getting philosophical about our marks again?" Connor smirked, pretending to study his map. "Money's money, mate. And this one's practically begging to be relieved of his wallet." Groups of tourists milled around them, cameras clicking incessantly at the royal guards who stood like crimson statues. Liam had always found them unnerving. Their stillness seemed almost inhuman, their discipline absolute. One guard, younger than the others with sharp, angular features, stood nearest to their target. The old man shifted on the bench, and as if on cue, his wallet slipped from his coat pocket. It landed silently on the pavement, its leather surface gleaming dully in the weak London sunlight. Their Mark continued studying his notebook, apparently oblivious to the loss. "Too perfect," Liam muttered, his instincts screaming caution. "Connor, something feels. Opportunity doesn't knock twice." Connor cut him off, already moving into position. "Run interference with the Japanese tour group coming round the corner. I'll make the pickup." Liam wanted to voice his concerns, but years of successful operations had taught him to trust Connor's judgment. He pushed off from the wall, purposefully colliding with a Japanese tourist raising her camera. "Oh, I'm so sorry!" he exclaimed, helping steady the woman while simultaneously blocking several tourists' views. "Please, let me help you get a better angle." He launched into an animated explanation about palace architecture, gesturing enthusiastically away from where Connor was making his move. The theft itself was masterful. Connor strolled past the wallet, dropping his tourist map. As he bent to retrieve it, the wallet vanished as if by magic. No one watching would have noticed anything amiss, just another tourist momentarily fumbling with his belongings. But as Liam turned to follow their exit strategy, something caught his eye. The young guard's head had shifted ever so slightly, tracking their movement through the crowd. It was barely perceptible, but in all their years working near the palace, Liam had never seen a guard break character. Worse still, as he watched, the guard's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly on his ceremonial rifle. These weren't the random adjustments of someone standing still for hours. This was a signal. "Connor," he whispered urgently as they merged into the crowd. "We've got a serious problem." The guard. "Always the worrier," Connor replied, but Liam noticed tension creeping into his partner's usually casual demeanor. "Let's find somewhere quiet to count our winnings. I saw a nice alley off Birdcage Walk." Their Mark had nearly reached the palace gates now, his gait still slow but somehow different. More measured. More purposeful. The frailty that had been so apparent minutes ago seemed to be evaporating with each step. As they turned away from the palace, Liam couldn't resist one final glance back. The young guard's head had turned again, more noticeably this time, and Liam could have sworn he saw the guard's hand move toward what looked like a concealed radio. They hadn't just picked the wrong pocket, they'd walked straight into an elaborate trap, and the jaws were beginning to close. The stolen wallet weighed heavily in Connor's pocket as they moved through the crowded streets near Palace. Without hesitation, he had executed their standard retrieval, a dropped map, a smooth bend, and the wallet had vanished into his coat while Liam distracted nearby tourists with his impromptu architectural tour. "Something's not right," Liam muttered, his eyes scanning the crowd behind them. The Japanese tourists he'd been entertaining were still taking photos of the palace, completely unaware of the theft that had occurred mere feet away. The old man continued his slow shuffle toward the palace gates, never breaking character. But it was the guards that made Liam's skin crawl. As they turned the corner onto Birdcage Walk, he caught another subtle movement, this time from a different guard, whose head had shifted ever so slightly to track their progress. These weren't the random adjustments of men standing still for hours. These were coordinated signals. "Will you relax?" Connor hissed, navigating through a cluster of American tourists. "The guards are glorified statues. That's their whole thing." Yet even as he spoke, the unmistakable sound of synchronized footsteps echoed off the ancient stones behind them. Connor's confident smile faltered. "That's not normal. They never move," Liam whispered, his earlier unease blooming into full-blown anxiety. "In all our years working this area, have you ever seen them break formation?" The footsteps grew closer, maintaining a steady, almost mechanical rhythm. Liam risked a glance back and immediately wished he hadn't. 2 guards had left their posts, moving with military precision through the crowd. Their faces remained impassive, but their intent was clear. "Split up," Connor suggested, his voice tight. "They can't follow both of us. I'll head toward—" "Look," Liam interrupted, nodding toward the end of the street. 2 more guards had appeared, their crimson uniforms stark against the gray London backdrop. They moved with the same measured pace, cutting off the most obvious escape route. The tourists around them seemed oblivious to the unfolding drama, parting unconsciously around the guards as if they were simply part of the usual palace pageantry. But Liam noticed something that made him shocked. None of the guards were carrying their ceremonial rifles. Their hands were free, ready for action. "Connor," he whispered urgently, "what exactly did you see in the wallet?" "Haven't checked it yet," Connor replied, his usual bravado cracking slightly. "Was waiting until we reached the alley." The alley, their usual counting spot off Birdcage Walk, now seemed like a potential trap. The narrow walls would leave them nowhere to run if the guards decided to make their move there. A sound caught Liam's attention, more footsteps, perfectly in sync with the others, approaching from another direction. The guards had somehow anticipated their escape routes, positioning themselves to herd them toward something. Liam swore he saw one of the royal guards slightly shift his head toward them. The guards never react to anything, why now? The realization hit him like a physical blow. "Connor, we need to ditch the wallet. Now." But before Connor could respond, movement near the palace gates caught their eye. The old man, their supposed mark, had stopped his shuffling walk. His posture had changed, the carefully constructed appearance of frailty melting away like morning frost. He stood straight-backed now, turning to observe their predicament with what appeared to be mild amusement. "Oh, we've really stepped in it this time," Connor muttered, his hand unconsciously moving to the pocket containing their stolen prize. "What do you reckon he is?" "Does it matter?" Liam responded, watching as more guards appeared, their formation tightening like a noose. "We've been played, mate. This whole thing was a setup from the start." The guards moved with practiced efficiency, their synchronized steps creating an almost hypnotic rhythm on the cobblestones. Each movement seemed calculated to minimize the possibility of escape while avoiding any attention from the oblivious tourists still milling about. This wasn't just a security response, it was a carefully choreographed operation, and they had walked right into it. The wallet, the old man's performance, even their choice of escape route, everything had been anticipated and planned for. The alley? Connor decided suddenly. It's our only shot. But as they turned toward their usual escape route, both thieves knew they were merely playing their assigned parts in someone else's elaborate production. The trap had been sprung, and they were about to discover exactly what they'd stumbled into. Connor's trembling fingers fumbled with the wallet as they huddled in the dimly lit alley. The distant sound of marching boots added urgency to their movements. As the leather folds fell open, both thieves felt their hearts stop. "Oh bloody hell," Liam whispered, staring at the contents. Instead of the expected cash, a weathered royal insignia gleamed up at them, its gold embossing catching what little light filtered into the alley. Beside it, an official-looking ID card and a sealed envelope marked Buckingham Palace in ornate script. Connor picked up the ID with unsteady hands. "Lord Alfred Sinclair." He read aloud, his voice barely audible. "Security clearance level." His voice trailed off as the implications sank in. Liam's mind raced, pieces falling into place. The name triggered a memory, a recent news segment he'd half-watched in a pub. Lord Sinclair wasn't just any aristocrat. He was one of the most trusted advisors to the royal family, a behind-the-scenes power player who'd shaped monarchy policies for decades. "We need to run," Liam said, his voice tight with panic. "Now." "Wait." Connor held up the ID, studying it closer. "Look at these security markings. This isn't just palace access. This is highest-level clearance. The kind that gets you into rooms the public doesn't even know exist." The sealed envelope bore the royal coat of arms, its wax seal unbroken. Whatever information it contained was important enough to warrant personal delivery by one of the crown's most trusted advisors. "This explains the guards," Liam muttered, glancing nervously toward the alley's entrance. "We haven't just robbed some wealthy old man. We've stolen from someone at the very heart of the monarchy." Connor rifled through the wallet's other compartments, finding more evidence of their colossal mistake. Several encrypted keycards, each bearing different security classifications. A handwritten note with what appeared to be coded instructions. A small USB drive, unmarked except for a series of numbers that matched notations in the notebook. This isn't just about palace security, Connor realized, his face paling. This is national security level stuff. The kind of things people disappear over. The sound of footsteps grew closer, their rhythmic patterns suggesting military training. The royal guards weren't just ceremonial figures anymore. They were highly trained security personnel, and they were closing in. Liam grabbed the wallet from Connor's hands, his mind racing through possibilities. "We could claim we found it, try to return it before." "Before what?" Connor interrupted. "Before they charge us with espionage? Before we end up in some black site prison? Look at these security clearances. They're going to assume we're foreign agents." The severity of their situation became crystal clear. This wasn't a simple pickpocketing gone wrong. They'd inadvertently stumbled into something far bigger, a world of state secrets and national security that people like them weren't supposed to know existed. More documents slipped from the wallet's hidden compartments, diplomatic codes, meeting schedules with foreign dignitaries, and what appeared to be emergency protocols for the royal family. Each new discovery made their situation more dire. The wallet seemed to grow heavier with each revelation. This wasn't just about the items they'd stolen, it was about what those items represented. Access to the highest levels of power, secrets that could shake the monarchy, and information that foreign governments would kill to obtain. "Remember that guard's reaction?" Liam said suddenly. "The way he moved when the wallet dropped? This wasn't an accident. We were set up." The realization hit them both simultaneously. The perfectly timed drop, the elderly act, the strategic positioning of the guards, it had all been orchestrated. But why? What game was being played, and what role had they unwittingly assumed in it? Before they could pursue that terrifying line of thought, the sound of marching boots grew louder. The royal guards were no longer trying to be subtle. Their quarry was cornered, and now the true purpose of this elaborate trap was about to be revealed. The sound of marching boots echoed through the London streets, each step a perfectly synchronized reminder of their dire situation. Liam and Connor froze in the alley, the stolen wallet heavy with its classified contents. The approaching footsteps weren't the casual stride of regular police. This was military precision. Turning toward the palace, they witnessed something unprecedented. The royal guards, known worldwide for their statue-like stillness, were moving. Their crimson uniforms and towering bearskin hats cut imposing figures against the grey London backdrop. But it was their movement that sent chills down Liam's spine, deliberate, coordinated, and completely silent. "This isn't possible," Connor whispered, his usual bravado evaporating. They never leave their posts. Never. Yet the evidence was undeniable. The guards advanced with mechanical precision, their faces maintaining that famous 1,000-yard stare even as they closed in. They didn't run or shout commands, they simply walked, each step measured and inevitable. Liam watched in horrified fascination as more guards appeared from different directions. Their formation was tactical, cutting off escape routes while maintaining the appearance of routine palace activity to any casual observers. Tourists continued snapping photos, completely oblivious to the hunt unfolding before them. The underground, Connor suggested, his voice tight with tension. If we can reach the station. A flash of crimson at the streets end silenced him. 2 more guards had materialized, their positioning too perfect to be coincidence. They were being herded, Liam realized, like animals in a slowly closing trap. The guards' silence was perhaps the most unnerving aspect. No commands were shouted, no warnings given. Their coordination seemed almost telepathic, each guard knowing exactly where to position themselves without a word being exchanged. A tourist brushed past one of the guards, apologizing profusely. The guard's expression never changed, but his eyes remained locked on their position. These weren't the ceremonial figures tourists photographed. These were highly trained military personnel executing a carefully planned operation. "Did you see that?" Liam whispered, noting how the guards had subtly adjusted their formation. "They're using old military hand signals. The kind used in special operations." Connor's face paled. "Who are these people? What have we stumbled into?" The answer came in the form of more footsteps, different ones this time. Through the gaps between the advancing guards, they caught glimpses of dark suits and earpieces. Palace security was joining the hunt, but they too maintained that eerie silence, as if speaking would somehow break the spell. "Split up," Connor decided suddenly. "They can't follow both of us. I'll head for the tube station, you take the back alleys toward Victoria Street." Before Liam could protest, Connor darted away, his years of experience evident in how smoothly he moved through the crowd. For a moment, it seemed their plan might work. Connor had always been the faster runner. But the guards didn't pursue him. Their formation remained focused on Liam, tightening like a noose. The reason was obvious. He still had the wallet. Whatever secrets it contained were valuable enough to warrant this unprecedented response. The guards moved with the patience of predators who knew their prey was cornered. Their faces remained impassive, but there was something almost amused in their rigid posture, as if they were participants in a game whose rules only they knew. The setting sun cast long shadows through the streets, making the guards' crimson uniforms appear almost black. Their bearskin hats loomed larger in the fading light, creating monstrous silhouettes against the historic buildings. Liam backed away, his professional composure crumbling in the face of this silent, inexorable pursuit. Every escape route he considered was already blocked, every potential hiding spot covered by those unwavering eyes. The guards weren't just catching thieves, they were sending a message about the consequences of crossing certain lines. And somewhere in the growing darkness, Lord Alfred Sinclair was watching, his frail elderly act discarded like an unnecessary costume. They had walked into his web, and now the spiders were closing in. The last rays of sunlight glinted off brass buttons and polished boots as the guards continued their silent advance. Night was falling over London, and with it, any hope of escape. Liam and Connor burst into action, their feet pounding against the rain-slicked cobblestones. London's crowded streets became their maze as they weaved through clusters of tourists and locals, the sound of measured footsteps never far behind. "Split up!" Connor shouted over his shoulder. "Victoria Station, I'll lose them in the crowds." He veered sharply left, disappearing down a narrow side street, while Liam sprinted straight ahead. But something was wrong. Every time Liam glanced back, the same 4 guards maintained their pursuit. Their crimson uniforms stood out against the gray cityscape, moving with that same unhurried yet relentless pace. They weren't running, weren't even breathing hard, just walking with mechanical precision, as if certain of their quarry's capture. He ducked into the underground station, taking the steps 3 at a time. The evening rush hour crowd provided temporary cover as he pushed through the turnstiles, ignoring the shouts of protest from station staff. But when he reached the platform, his heart sank. More guards waited there, their crimson uniforms drawing curious stares from commuters. Back on street level, Liam sprinted past high-end shops and historic buildings. His years of running London's rooftops had given him intimate knowledge of the city's hidden paths and shortcuts. He cut through a busy pub, startling patrons as he pushed through the crowd. The guards didn't follow him inside. They simply circled around, maintaining their positions at every exit. His lungs burned as he emerged into a narrow alley, the kind tourists never saw. Ancient brick walls pressed in from both sides, centuries of London history watching his desperate flight. But the guards had anticipated this move too. Their footsteps echoed from both ends of the alley, the sound amplified by the confined space. Through a gap between buildings, Liam caught a glimpse of Connor being escorted by another group of guards. His partner wasn't resisting, his usual cockiness replaced by grim resignation. They'd been herded like cattle, their every move predicted and countered. The guards hadn't been trying to catch them quickly, they'd been steering them towards something. Or someone. Sweat trickled down Liam's back despite the cool evening air. His professional pride warred with mounting panic. In all his years of pickpocketing, he never encountered anything like this. The guards moved like components of a single machine, their coordination beyond anything mere training could explain. He tried another desperate sprint, cutting through a service entrance and emerging onto a quieter street. But the guards were there too, their formation shifting to accommodate his new position while maintaining that same inexorable pressure. Looking up, Liam spotted a fire escape, his last resort. He'd always been the better climber between him and Connor. But as his hand gripped the lowest rung, a voice cut through the gathering darkness. "I wouldn't," it said simply. The voice belonged to one of the guards, the first words any of them had spoken during the pursuit. "The route is already covered." Liam's shoulders sagged. The voice confirmed what he'd suspected. These weren't ceremonial guards playing at security. These were highly trained operators using the guards' uniforms as cover. The circle tightened, crimson uniforms closing in from all directions. There was nowhere left to run, no angle they hadn't anticipated, no escape route they hadn't blocked. The wallet in his pocket seemed to grow heavier with each passing second, its secrets burning against his chest. As darkness settled over London, Liam realized they'd never had a chance. From the moment that wallet hit the pavement, they'd been players in someone else's game. And now, surrounded by silent crimson figures, it was time to meet the game master. Liam stumbled into a dead-end alley, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The wallet felt like it was burning through his pocket, a reminder of their monumental mistake. Before he could contemplate his next move, a shadow fell across the alley's entrance. Lord Alfred Sinclair stood there, his transformation complete. Gone was the shuffling elderly man from the palace gates. In his place stood a figure of quiet authority, his posture straight and commanding. 2 royal guards flanked him, their ceremonial uniforms now seeming more menacing than decorative. "You must be quite foolish," Sinclair said, his cultured voice carrying easily in the confined space. "Or very unlucky." He stepped forward, each movement precise and controlled. The frailty he'd displayed earlier had vanished like morning mist. The sound of boots on cobblestones announced more arrivals. 2 additional guards appeared, dragging a struggling Connor between them. His partner's face was already showing signs of what would become an impressive black eye. "I tried to warn you," Connor called out, wincing as the guards tightened their grip. "They're not just ceremonial guards, they're SAS. Special forces using the palace guard routine as cover." Sinclair's lips curved into a small, satisfied smile. "Quite perceptive, though a bit late for such observations." He held out his hand expectantly. "The wallet, if you please." Liam's mind raced through options that were rapidly dwindling to zero. The guards had positioned themselves with military precision, blocking every possible escape route. Their faces remained impassive, but their stance suggested they were prepared for any resistance. "Why?" Liam found himself asking as he surrendered the wallet. Why go through all this elaborate setup? You could have had us arrested the moment we touched it. Sinclair examined the wallet briefly before tucking it into his coat. Sometimes, Mr. Matthews, the best way to catch a fox is to let it think it's hunting a rabbit. His eyes, sharp and calculating, fixed on Liam. We've been watching you both for months. Your techniques, your patterns, your escape routes, all carefully documented. We're just pickpockets, Connor protested. Why waste all this effort on us? Because, Sinclair replied, you're the best at what you do, and we need people with your particular skill set. He paused, letting the implication sink in. Liam's jaw dropped as understanding dawned. This wasn't about catching us. It was a job interview. Of sorts, Sinclair confirmed. Though failing it would have had rather severe consequences. He nodded to the guards, who adjusted their grip on Connor. You have a choice to make, gentlemen. Or we work for you. Liam finished. Doing what exactly? Let's call it an unofficial acquisition of items of national interest. Sinclair's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your particular talents, applied in service to the crown rather than against it. Connor barked out a laugh despite his situation. So we'd be thieves for the country? You'd be intelligence assets. Sinclair corrected smoothly. With full diplomatic protection, provided you follow instructions precisely. He checked his watch, a gesture that seemed deliberately theatrical. You have 30 seconds to decide. Liam and Connor exchanged glances. Years of partnership allowed them to communicate volumes in that brief look. They'd walked into this trap thinking they were the predators, only to discover they were being recruited by something far bigger than themselves. Well, Liam sighed. I suppose it beats prison. Excellent choice, Sinclair said, though his tone suggested there had never really been an alternative. He gestured to the guards, who released Connor. Welcome to the shadow side of the monarchy, gentlemen. Do try not to disappoint us. As they were escorted from the alley, Liam glanced back at Buckingham Palace looming against the darkening sky. The royal guards had already resumed their posts, standing motionless as tourists snapped photos. No one would ever guess that beneath those ceremonial uniforms lay one of the crown's most elite security forces. Sinclair's voice drifted back to them as they walked. Oh, and gentlemen? The next time you think you've spotted an easy mark near the palace, do remember this evening. The night swallowed them up, leaving no trace of the drama that had unfolded. Just another London evening, with the royal guards standing silent watch, protecting secrets far darker and deeper than any tourist could imagine.